Have you ever wondered if there's one hidden key in spiritual life that everyone seems to overlook? A single practice so simple yet so powerful that entire teachings, retreats, and even controversies revolve around it? This idea might sound absurd, until you look closer and realize how many so-called spiritual authorities have fought to keep it under wraps. They present elaborate ceremonies, mystical teachings, or expensive courses, all while the real transformation sits quietly in plain sight. Today, we're uncovering what many believe is the most vital practice of all, becoming the observer of your mind. Prepare to be surprised, maybe even shocked, at how easily this concept can disrupt everything you thought you knew about spiritual growth. But don't just take my word for it. Controversies have erupted around teachers who've tried to monopolize this practice, turning something meant to free you into a source of profit and control. Could this be the one spiritual approach that truly cuts through illusions? Let's find out as we explore the real secrets and rumors behind this astonishing method, the common misconception. So many of us grew up believing that spirituality had everything to do with external rituals, chanting mantras we hardly understand, making grand offerings, memorizing sacred texts. There's beauty in tradition, of course, but here's the surprising twist. Countless spiritual luminaries insist that all those external acts are secondary at best. The real work, they say, is something internal, something that can happen anytime, anywhere. It's like a magician's trick. We see the flashy gestures and special effects, never suspecting that the biggest illusion lies in our own mental chatter. Yes, some critics claim these ceremonial aspects distract us from true self-discovery. In fact, rumors persist that certain high-profile spiritual leaders deliberately emphasize complicated rituals to keep their followers dependent. If seekers believe they need a special environment, a carefully choreographed ceremony, or an official blessing, they might never suspect that they already possess the most vital tool: silent, honest observation of their own mind. This misconception often leads us astray. We get convinced that spiritual progress means collecting exotic techniques, traveling to remote temples, or mastering obscure practices. Yet behind closed doors, many respected teachers quietly admit that none of these matter if you don't watch your own mind. That's what changes everything. And here's the intriguing question. Have we been led astray by captivating performances and symbolic gestures? Or did we simply miss the memo that the most profound shift happens in a place we rarely look, in the stillness of our own awareness? The hidden origin of the I. Let's get to the heart of the controversy. Our sense of I. From childhood, we're told who we are. Our names, our personalities, our personal histories, until it seems obvious that there's a permanent me at the center of it all. But according to many spiritual traditions, that I is more fragile than we think. It's a mental construct, a tapestry of thoughts and memories woven together so seamlessly that it feels real. But what if it's just a trick of the mind? Some teachers claim this knowledge has been withheld or downplayed. The rumor? If everyone realizes the I is not as solid as it appears, certain spiritual hierarchies lose their grip. After all, if the seat of your consciousness isn't really the identity you've always clung to, how easily can external authorities guide or manipulate you? Throughout history, there have been heated debates and even modern-day controversies. People who dive into this concept of a fleeting self can become disenchanted with institutions built on strict identity roles. Some break away from conventional religion or dogmatic systems, claiming that they've finally discovered the ultimate spiritual hack. By seeing the I for what it is, they're no longer enslaved by external judgments or internal cravings. Yet critics argue that it's reckless to undermine a person's sense of self. They warn that telling someone their I is an illusion could do more harm than good, especially if the person isn't psychologically prepared. Whichever side you fall on, one thing is certain: the very core of our existence, our personal identity, may not be as fixed as we imagine. And that's exactly what leads us to the idea of the observer, becoming the observer. So, if the I is wobbly, who's actually in charge of our lives? Here's where things get downright astonishing. Many mystical traditions agree that we can shift our perspective from identifying with thoughts to simply watching them. The moment you stop wrestling with the stream of mental chatter and start observing it, you see how your mind jumps around, criticizing, anticipating, worrying, or daydreaming. You might be asking, is it really that powerful? Some skeptics say this practice is too simplistic. They believe real spiritual transformation must involve complicated techniques or strict discipline. Yet countless practitioners swear that the simple act of detached observation cracks open an entire world of insight. They describe a subtle, yet profound shift. Instead of being swept up in negativity, you start to notice it. Instead of drowning in anxiety, you see anxiety like a passing storm cloud overhead. Why would anyone try to hide this? Conspiracies abound, claiming certain gurus keep people chasing after high-priced workshops and advanced teachings, while the essence, just observing the mind, gets buried under layers of marketing. If every seeker realized they could do this on their own, the lucrative industry surrounding spiritual enlightenment could collapse. And that, some argue, is the real reason mind observation isn't always front and center. Regardless of these controversies, the practice remains remarkably accessible. You don't need special equipment or years of training to start noticing your thoughts, just a willingness to be still, even for a moment, and see what arises. Some say it's the simplest thing in the world, yet the most challenging, because we're so used to reacting rather than watching. Traps of the ego. Let's be honest, the mind hates to be watched. It thrives on reaction, drama, and endless chatter. The ego, the part of us that's obsessed with identity, status, and external validation, feeds on conflicts and crises to stay relevant. When you start observing your thoughts, you begin to see just how often they're ego-driven. And that can be unsettling. But let's talk about a few real-life shockers. Over the years, we've seen celebrities and spiritual figures alike tumble from grace, seemingly overnight. At first glance, it looks like a personal failing, infidelity, mismanagement, or a meltdown. Some insiders claim that under the surface, there was a refusal to confront the restless ego. In other words, success without self-awareness can be a recipe for explosive downfall. What's more disturbing, though, are stories of people twisting the no-ego concept into a means of control. Picture a self-proclaimed guru telling followers they must surrender their identity to him, citing the illusion of the I as justification. These are dangerous misinterpretations. True freedom comes from realizing the ego isn't who you really are, not from handing that ego to someone else in a power grab. This tension illustrates why the observer idea can be both liberating and risky. In the right hands, it's a doorway to authenticity. In the wrong hands, it's a tool for manipulation. And yes, there have even been rumors of entire spiritual communities built on the promise of ego dissolution. Communities that ended up facing serious legal battles for exploiting vulnerable people. That's the dark side of this otherwise enlightening practice, the power of silence. So, how do you navigate this territory without getting lost in the hype? One ancient approach is cultivating silence, not just external quiet, but an internal, unwavering calm that persists even in noisy settings. You might have heard stories of monks in remote mountain caves or practitioners spending months in solitude. But get this, some folks achieve equally profound stillness while living in the heart of bustling cities. One rumor making the rounds is that certain meditation groups have witnessed near-miraculous recoveries from stress-induced illnesses. People claim that by maintaining a steady practice of silent observation, they've lowered blood pressure, improved mental health, and even found relief from chronic pain. Critics demand scientific proof, and while a growing number of studies do suggest benefits, the controversies haven't abated. Some skeptics believe these anecdotes are exaggerated or manipulated for publicity. Nonetheless, the power of silence can't be dismissed. When you truly watch your mind, even in a single moment of stillness, you see how your thoughts often chase after illusions, objects, relationships, achievements. But here's the stunner. If you spend enough time in observation, you might realize these illusions are just that, temporary flickers in a vast ocean of awareness. And once you taste that ocean-like stillness, many superficial pursuits lose their allure. Just don't expect everyone to celebrate your newfound calm. Friends may worry you're changing too much, or accuse you of being detached. You might even face social or familial friction if your serenity clashes with their drama. But as many dedicated observers will tell you, the inner peace that arises from genuine silence far outweighs external approval. And for some, it's the first time they've tasted real freedom, pitfalls, and pseudo-spirituality. With all this talk of inner freedom, it's not hard to see why there's a shadowy underbelly in spiritual circles. Pseudo-spiritual movements that harness these principles for questionable ends. From cult-like organizations to manipulative leaders, stories abound of people using mind observation as a veneer to keep followers docile. You might have heard rumors or read exposés about groups that demand allegiance under the guise of ego dissolution, only to push members into labor, questionable financial contributions, or other forms of exploitation. In some cases, lawsuits have emerged, though details often get swept under the rug. Victims claim they were told to watch their minds so thoroughly that they no longer questioned abusive or unethical behavior from leaders. This is exactly why many sincere practitioners advise a healthy balance of skepticism and trust. Observe your own mind, they say, but also keep your eyes open to what's happening around you. A teacher who genuinely values your spiritual growth will encourage independence, never blind obedience. They'll point you toward discovering your own inner observer, not try to hijack that observer for their personal gain. And then there's the issue of mental health. If someone struggles with severe anxiety or other conditions, unscrupulous teachers might blame them for not observing well enough, adding layers of guilt. Yet credible spiritual guidance often goes hand in hand with professional help when needed. It's important to remember that genuine self-inquiry aims to free you, not trap you in shame or confusion. Real transformation. Despite the pitfalls, the heart of this practice remains astonishingly pure, and it's changing lives. Consider the countless testimonies of individuals who felt trapped in cycles of worry or self-doubt. They tried therapy, self-help books, or even medication. Some of these tools helped, some didn't. But for many, a real breakthrough happened when they realized they could watch their thoughts instead of obeying them. What's the big deal about that? By calmly observing the mind's chatter, you begin to see patterns. You notice how certain triggers spark anger, fear, or self-criticism. You realize the same mental loops play out over and over. And when you see these patterns without judgment, you unlock a quiet power, choice. You can choose not to indulge destructive habits. You can opt to let negativity pass instead of latching onto it. A few years ago, speculation arose around mental health professionals who, some say, secretly incorporate mindfulness-based techniques while publicly prescribing medication. The rumor is that Big Pharma doesn't want simple, no-cost practices overshadowing profitable treatments. Whether true or not, the reality stands. An increasing number of psychologists acknowledge that simply noticing your thoughts can complement more traditional therapies. But here's what surprises many people the most. Once you get a taste of genuine observation, you might feel a weight lift from your shoulders. Suddenly, everyday dramas don't carry the same sting. You see them come and go, like clouds in a wide-open sky. It's not that you become numb or lose empathy. Rather, you handle life with more equanimity. You still experience emotions, but they don't hijack your entire being. That shift, humble as it may sound, is revolutionary. Final thoughts. When we peel back the layers of rituals, controversies, and supposed secrets, the takeaway is shockingly simple. The most vital thing in spiritual life may be nothing more than watching your own mind. No expensive retreats, no elaborate rites, no grand proclamations. Just the steady, unflinching gaze of awareness turned inward. Yet that simple act can rattle the foundations of our identities, our relationships, and even the spiritual establishments that profit from keeping things complicated. It can open up a realm of peace and stillness that many never knew existed. And yes, it can also put you face to face with your most deeply rooted fears. But that's exactly why this practice is so powerful. By seeing those fears for what they are, you set yourself free from their grip. As you ponder these insights, I invite you to question everything you've been told about spirituality. Ask yourself if the real transformation lies not in adding more beliefs, but in letting go of who you think you are. You might find that in the space where your mind finally settles, a new kind of freedom emerges, one that was always there, quietly waiting for you to notice. Thanks for staying with me on this journey. If this resonates, don't just click away. Try it. Spend a few minutes observing your thoughts without getting caught up in them. You may discover more than you ever expected from something so simple, yet so profoundly transformative.